It's 1934 and we're in a photographer's shop in Nottingham, and a man walks in and he asks for his photograph to be taken for a passport, and the girl behind the desk says to him, "Oh, where are you going?" He says, "Well, I'm going to South Africa. I live over there." She says, "Oh, what do you do?" He says, I ran a college in Durban." She says, "Oh, are you married?" "Well, I was. I'm divorced, I'm afraid. I've got a child there, but so I've got to go back and everything." And the girl behind the counter says, and she's about 24. She's 24 and he's 44, and she says, "I'd like to come with you." He said, "Well, I'd love you to come with me." She says, "But I'd have to think about it. Give me until the time when you come to pick the photograph up. That's the day after tomorrow." And he came back with the photograph to pick the photograph up, and she says, "Yes, I want to come with you, and we'll see how we get on the boat going down there. I'm going to get my own passport, and if we get on okay, maybe we should think about getting married when we arrive." "I'd like to get you on a slow boat to China, all to myself alone. Get you and keep you in my arms evermore. Leave all your lovers weeping on the faraway shore. Out on the briny, with the moon big and shiny, melting your heart to stone. I'd love to get you on a slow boat to China, all to myself alone." Well, when they stepped off the boat, they went to a registry office with a special license and got married immediately. And before she left, my mother asked her, said, "What did you see in this chap? Why are you going off with him like that?" She says, "Well, he's good looking and he has a very voice. He sounds like a BBC announcer. I just thought, this is the one I want." And it's something about Irene that I admired in a way. And when I got to know her later on in life, when I went to live with her older, she was impulsive, incautious, I suppose, but she was decisive about things. She was bold. She had a boldness to her. But anyway, they were in South Africa. They soon had a child called Cynthia, and then Irene realised that she probably had made a mistake, because they must have had 1 or 2 happy years, but she couldn't get back because it was wartime, and all the transport were requisitioned. So what she did, she saved up and secretly, and when Reg was at work, he running his technical college, she went to pick up Cynthia from school, left a note on the kitchen table, and buggered off back to Blighty. What was wrong with Reg? Well, one of the things was they found out he's, in today's terms, bipolar. He would go out on spending sprees and buy, say, 2 Rolexes, and I think once he went out to a showroom and to buy a new car and couldn't decide which colour he wanted, so he bought 2 of them, one in one colour, one in the other. But he also had other sort of kinks. I didn't realise that. I was told when I was about 12, my mother said, "Well, you see, he used to like her to sit on his face all night, and he would get very red in the face. She thought she was going to suffocate him and she would get done for murder." So I said, "Well, why didn't she get up and go and fetch a policeman?" Well, Irene arrived back in England in 1945, and she was drawn back not just because of Reg, she said, but because she didn't like the heat in South Africa, in Durban. It was hot all the time. She thought coming back to the winter in England was wonderful, and she also missed her family, and sister particularly, her mother, but she also missed dancing. And in fact, the songs I'm playing today are all of that period and the ones she would dance to. And one of her favourite songs that she liked was the Harry Lime theme, 1949. Wasn't the only song she liked, of course, but and she didn't expect it. But suddenly, Reg arrived back. He came back after and tried to get her to come back, and Cynthia come back to South Africa with them. But she didn't want to go, so he decided to give his notice in the college in Durban, and he took a little job working in a primary school. And he wanted to be at the seaside, he said, because they were used to being at the seaside. They spent some time in Brighton. And Durban, a bit different, of course, the weather. And they went to live near Skegness in a place called Chapel St Leonard's. And but it didn't last long. Maybe there's too much sitting on the face again, and I don't spending money on Rolexes and things. I don't know, but it was a disaster really. And he went back to South Africa, and she refused to come with him. And then she might have said, "I'll come later." But then after that, Irene would have. Men friends who she'd go out with. One of them was Dennis Healy, the Labour politician who became, and another one was a chap probably called Larry Lamb. But the problem was that one day she found out that she was pregnant, and so my father said what took place then was a dirty, rotten, vile thing. He said years later to me. A wheeze came up. Irene sent Reg a telegram saying, "Please come back. I've changed my mind. Come back immediately. I miss you. I love you. I can't live without you," and all this sort of thing. And of course, he blew his pension money, his superannuation money, and flew back. In those days, it was terribly expensive, and he was back within a week. He had to fly on hops across through Kenya and up to Cairo and Rome and then on to London. And so he did that. He came back, and of course a baby was born 8 months later, which he thought, well, it's about a month premature, and he assumed it was his. And he always assumed that. But sadly, the baby, after about a year or so, the baby Jane, died of pneumonia. And then Reg, there's more rows. There's no point in having him around. And Reg returned to South Africa, and she refused to go this time. But when he got to the Canary Islands, he sent a telegram on the way down there on the boat from Las Palmas. He sent a telegram, said, "Can you please turn around and come back to England? I've decided I'd rather be in England with you than South Africa on my own." And I did a little drawing of the incident some years ago, and here it is. And she's saying to him, there's a telegram man on the left, and on the right is the purser of the ship handing the telegram back to Reg. It's the same telegram, and she just scrawled across it, "Jump overboard." Your cheating heart will pine someday and crave the love you throw away. The time will come when you'll be blue. Your cheating heart will tell on you. Well, I really got to know Auntie Irene after 11, because I failed the 11 plus, and I was sent to Skegness, to Chapel St Leonard's, to live at the thatched cottage with Auntie Irene. And I saw there how the sort of personality she had up close, and there were some things I liked and some things I didn't like. For example, she was stopped in the street once about Cynthia, who was living there. I think Cynthia was in the sixth form at the local grammar school, and the French mistress stopped her in the street. I was walking with her, and the French mistress said, "You haven't put Cynthia's name down for the school trip to Paris." And Irene said, "To Paris? No, of course I haven't put it down. The reason I haven't put it down," he said, "I haven't been to Paris yet. When she goes to Paris for the first time, I want to take her, not you." On another occasion, she went round to the landlord of the thatched cottage and said she wasn't going to pay him any money because her husband had disappeared to South Africa. She didn't tell him that she'd told him to jump overboard, and she wasn't going to pay any money at all to him in the rent. And the landlord, I remember standing in the doorway, he looked absolutely stunned by this. And then she had these long beach walks. She would think nothing of dragging me along for a walk from Chapel St Leonard's to Skegness along the beach, which is about 8 miles in the winter. Can you imagine? January, February. Walk there, and sometimes walk back as well. And so she was a lost soul in a way, but she had this sort of boldness to her as well. And one of the things that she did that was bold for me was that she was working, helping out in a home for children, girls whose parents couldn't afford to, they were miners' daughters who couldn't afford to send them to the seaside for holidays, and there were these homes for them, especially in Skegness. And she organised a float there, or asked me to organise it, at a carnival, a Skegness carnival. And she handed it to me. She says, "I want you, Artie, I want you to design the whole of the float." I said, "What?" She said, "Dress these girls up in clothes you've designed and things like that." So I had to go down to this home, and all these girls standing there in knickers and things like that, so about my age, they were 12 and 13, that. And dress them up according to their body shapes and things as sweets. And I've got a photograph of it here, and it's my first ever exhibition, really, I suppose. And Irene went and Irene got me doing this. If it wasn't for Irene, I would never have done it. I wouldn't have had the courage to do something like that. So she'd do things like that. But one of the things she did do, as I said, was she loved dancing, and so I was dragged off to the sandcastle on the front in Skegness at least once a week. She'd meet me from school, and she wanted a partner to dance in the dance floor. These were the afternoon tea dances, and about 4:30 or so, so that somebody would come and interrupt, and then it would just be a way of getting her on the floor. And so another tune that Irene, the band always struck up when Irene walked in, was this one. And it's from a musical called The Pyjama Game, believe it or not. It's about a pyjama factory in New York, but some of the songs were rather good. I know a dark, secluded place, a place where no one knows your face. A glass of wine, a fast embrace. It's called Hernando's Hideaway. Ole! And then as we're dancing around, somebody walk over, and he'd say, "Hello, I'm Terry from Grimsby. Can I take over, lad?" Which is what Irene wanted. And so I walked off. I was only too pleased to let him take over. And of course then he did the proper tango with her. all you see are silhouettes, and all you hear are castanets, and no one dares how late it is, not at Hernanda's hideaway, hooray! So those sort of things were regular, the dancing, everything. I remember on the dance floor and then sitting for afternoon tea, and then somebody else would wander over, and then it was all go and ask Irene for a dance, and off we went, and I could just sit there, which was fine. But she eventually decided to leave Chapel St Leonard's, and she took a job in Kidderminster doing something or other, working in a home or something, I don't know. But anyway, she left, probably may have been because she didn't pay the rent, I don't know. But anyway, she left, and she wandered around doing various things, came over to Newark, came over to Nottingham, and then she joined something called the Over 30 Club in Nottingham, in West Bridgeford. The other thing is, most of the people were well over 30 who were members of it, but she got my mother to join as well, and that's why my mother met various people as well, John and other people. But she met somebody, Irene met somebody that she thought I could fall in love with, or my mother gave her a push to do that, and who'd lost his wife, and his name was also Reg, so they became known as Reg number 1 and Reg number 2. Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger, you may see a stranger across a crowded room, and somehow you know even then, that somehow you'll see him again and again. Some enchanted evening, when you find your true love, when you hear her call you across a crowded room, then fly to his side and make him your own. All through your life you may dream all alone. Well, not long after she married Reg number 2, she had the divorce from Reg number 1 a few years before. She heard that Reg number 1 had dropped dead in the street in a heart attack, I think, in Durban, and there's a lot of talk. So he only had 10 bob in his pocket, about his profligacy and his gone, about £10 today, and that's all he had. And so he didn't have any money at all to pay for the funeral, so Reg number 2 ended up paying for Reg number 1's funeral. Sadly, Reg number 2 then died a few years later of a heart attack. I don't know. I mean, and Irene then took a job as an assistant matron at a British Red Cross Old People's Home in Newark, and that's how my mother eventually went in there. But she because she'd been in South Africa, I think it was that she had this sort of struggle with race. She was upset when on TV if she saw a couple, a black couple and a white person, a black person kissing, for example. She says, "Oh, I don't like that, switch it off," and things like that. But she did come round to things, and she tried in a silly way to say things like, there's somebody at the front door. She said, "Oh, Muriel, there's a coloured gentleman at the front door," things like that. You see, putting her foot in it and that sort of thing. But that's how she was, and she did get better, because what happened was is that her granddaughter had a mixed race partner, and so Irene had a mixed race great grandchild who actually came to live with her for a time, and so it was interesting how she could adapt to that, and she sort of like forgot all this other stuff. So it's part of this thing where she seemed to almost allow the unexpected to happen. I mean, she was dogmatic in a way, but she was dogged as well, and she was bold, and those are all things I admired, and I've tried to sort of emulate that. But the thing I've emulated most of all is that she allowed the unexpected to happen and then developed that, and that's of course an essential thing of art, because if you know such things, people say we learn from your mistakes. Well, that's true, but if you're making art, it's not just that. The mistakes actually may give you a new direction and make you develop something that you hadn't thought of before. And I suspect it's the same in science. Well, it is. If people, stumble across something when they're looking for something else, or they make a mistake and something else rears its head, and they develop that. So that was one of the things that I admired her for, that she could actually take something and turn it into something else, apart from this bold decisiveness, and I'm afraid the impulsiveness and incautiousness I've also taken on from her, I guess. But she did say to me, she said, you want to, you just have to sort of, when I was at Skegness, she said, you just have to, whatever happens, you just have to deal with it, and you can't plan everything, and you just have to make the best of it and do the best of it. That's what I've tried to do, and so on. Not that she always did, but it was an interesting point. When I was just a little boy, I asked my Auntie, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? Here's what she said to me. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be. And that's Dear Auntie Irene. And next week we'll be looking at Uncle Charles. But in the meantime, here's a picture of Auntie Irene. You can see she was something of a looker.